Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to Falcons training camp. It is our day one recap show here on the Falcoholic Live. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host. He is Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Welcome in, Adnan. You were there braving the heat today at Flowery Branch. I guess maybe it actually wasn't that bad because it was overcast, but Adnan, first day of camp. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, and yeah, it was last year during camp. It was just like scorching every single day, but this year, it was a light rain early on while I was driving over there. It was very overcast. It was warm enough to where Darnell Mooney was wearing a hoodie the entire practice, so it couldn't have been that bad. But yeah, definitely compared to years past, it was very, very mild today, even though the sun did start coming out, a little bit toward the back end portion. So if it can stay overcast the way it was today, that would be just lovely.
That does not sound like the worst thing in the world. But yes, this is just the beginning, so I'm sure the heat will come at some point. It's inevitable. But guys, welcome in. Thanks for joining us today. Uh, I'm sure you guys noticed not a lot of clips coming out of camp today because, as Adam was saying, apparently a very, very narrow recording window. And during that window, there was just stretching. So the thumbnail, the video just has stretching. The clips just have stretching. But we're hoping for a little bit more action in days going forward. But I know Adam was able to get some intel about player health, about some of the depth chart related stuff that I know people are clamoring for. So we're going to get to that real soon. Real quick, want to bring you guys a word from today's sponsor. It is BetOnline. Once again, folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. And right now with the promo they are running, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit. You can bet that on anything, including the upcoming Olympics, baseball, Formula One racing, all that good stuff. And BetOnline's got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And then, folks, once the game is over, you can head on over to BetOnline's online casino, get in on that game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of their over 150 slots games. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website today to get in on the action. You can use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit, up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Adnan, I know you got a lot of notes to get through. Where do you want to start today's breakdown?
Well, like you did mention, and I apologize to all the viewers for a lack of video clips, but they gave us nothing. Like they gave us nothing. We cannot record walkthroughs. That was very emphasized. Today was just a day of walkthroughs. Very, very light, day. Raheem Morris said that there will be a bit of a ramp up, and I think the expectation is it's going to be like a very exciting day on Saturday night when they bring back Friday Night Lights at I think it's Second Year High School is the name of it. I probably should have looked that up before, confirmed the name of the high school before the show, but yeah. So Saturday is one of the 2 days when practice will be in front of fans, and I'm pretty sure there will be pads, and it will be very exciting. And until then, it's a bit of a ramp up. But yeah, let's start with the big names. Let's start with Kirk Cousins, Grady Jarrett. Both guys um, are medically cleared. They're both ready to go. Raheem said that everyone except for running back Robert Burns is, fully healthy. Everyone reported Robert Burns is the only guy on the pup list. Kirk Cousins was out there for every single snap of walkthroughs with the first team. Grady Jarrett was wearing a sleeve on his leg, but he was out there with the first teamers next to David Onyemata, next to Taquan Graham. And both of those guys, it looks like both of those guys, my guess will be an absolute full go by week one of the regular season. Both guys talked about sort of the journeys that it took to get to this point. Kirk talked about how much better he feels even now compared to OTAs, and how he really wants to be out there every single day. Kirk Cousins also sort of spilled the beans a little bit that he will not play in the preseason, but that's exclusively a coaching decision. He says he really wants to play in the preseason, but I get sort of not pushing him after that Achilles injury because that was a very brutal injury. But yeah, it's great news on the health front. And yeah, I mean, both of those guys, I want to say they looked good, but it's everyone looked like they looked because it was just walkthroughs. But it was great that those guys were out there. So yeah, that was the major story coming out of camp today.
Yeah, and that's what you want to hear, right? Like, there's a lot of drama happening at training camps across the NFL. In case I don't know if people have noticed that, but the 49ers have two of their best players holding out. A lot of teams have players holding out for contract reasons. A lot of teams have guys missing time with injury and all that stuff. So, the fact that the Falcons don't have any holdouts and only one player on the PUP to start training camp, that's good. It's almost as it can only be slightly better, right? And definitely happy to hear. I know like Kirk Cousins' health was definitely something that we were trying to monitor. It didn't look like it was going to be a problem given that he was participating in OTAs and mini camps and all that, but it's nice to officially know that he's been fully cleared. Now, will they like throw him out to the wolves and have people try to sack him and train to get? No, of course not. But like he's out there, he's ready to go. And the same thing with Grady Jarrett. I think they've said basically they're gonna maybe like ramp him up a little bit, or they may like modify his practice schedule depending on how he adjusts. But medically speaking, he's cleared to be out there, so that's great to know. And yeah, I mean, I think the most fascinating stuff from a day like today, and I know you took lots of great notes on it, is like really like in OTAs and minicamp and all that, we know the team is like fully experimenting and getting all these guys together for the first time. Now heading into training camp, it gets a little bit more serious because when you see the depth chart, it's obviously nowhere near set in stone yet. But this is now like they've had a chance to view all these guys at OTAs and minicamp and all this stuff, and now they're sort of building their depth charts, and it starts to matter a little bit more. Every day it's going to matter a little bit more. But I know the one you just mentioned, in terms of the defensive line, I know when we've talked about the defensive line, we've been kind of worried that Taquan Graham might be one of the guys sort of on the outside looking in, given how many people they've brought into this room and to this rotation. But the fact that Taquan Graham is playing with the ones to open camp, I think is a really good sign for him. And I'm happy to hear it because like I think 2 years ago before his injury, he looked like he was really starting to come on. After the injury, he just hasn't really been the same. But you look at Taquan Graham's measurables and how he has played in the past, it seems like this would be a good fit for him. Like going back to this style of defense where he can play more of that versatile inside-outside role, that 3-4 DN stuff. That's kind of what he was drafted to play. So I'm excited to hear that. And then I know another guy that was sort of surprisingly getting run with the starters was James Smith-Williams. That one was kind of a shocker to me, given the timing of his signing and the fact that not a player that's been super heralded throughout his career. Definitely someone that's played a lot of football, but not really been a heralded guy. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me to hear that as well.
Oh yeah, it was definitely shocking when I looked out there and I'm like, is that James Smith Williams running out there with the ones? I mean, don't get me wrong, veteran presence, and I'm assuming that the coaching staff values that. He has 7 sacks in his 4 seasons with Washington. But yeah, he was getting a lot of reps with the ones. I don't want to sort of set in stone a sort of a depth chart when it comes to that defensive line, when it comes to those edge guys, because he was out there. There was a lot of rotation between 4 primary players: James Smith Williams, Lorenzo Carter, Arnold Ebiketie, Braylon Trice. Zach Harrison got some reps, not that many. They were playing Braylon Trice, with his hand on the ground. They were playing him with his hand off the ground in that linebacker role. They had different formations when they had 5 defensive linemen with Taquan Graham along with David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett. They had Ebiketie and Lorenzo Carter flanking them as the outside linebackers. So that it's going to be a heavy rotation when it comes to that defensive line all season long. We're seeing it right away from camp, but the names that I mentioned are the primary guys that are sort of the favorites, I assume, right now to get the most playing time, now being day one of camp. But yeah, James Smith Williams is firmly entrenched in that conversation. He's someone that we didn't really talk about very much coming into camp, thinking that, hey, this guy is, more of a depth piece. This guy may be, fighting for that roster spot, and he still might be. But right now, based on what the coaches are showing us on day one of camp, it seems like he'll likely be more than just depth looking at just day one of training. Now we'll see moving
Mhm.
forward what
Yeah.
happens. There's still a very long way to go until Pittsburgh week one. But yeah, James Smith, well, that was the most surprising name where it's like, yeah, he's getting a lot of reps out there, and he's getting a lot of reps next to a lot of very important pieces.
Yeah, yeah, and James Smith Williams. I think you said like Lorenzo Carter was usually the other starting outside linebacker, but Ebiketie and rookie Braylon Trice still getting involved. You'd expect Braylon Trice to earn more reps over the course of camp. Along, it seems like most of the rookies were not really factoring in with the starters, which that's typical. But yeah,
It was just Trice and Rook Ororo. Like they were the only two rookies that were with the one. So what they did was, they had what I call the Kirk Cousins walkthrough, which is, the area of which I appreciate this. It was the area right next to the media members, and then on the other end they had another walkthrough going on simultaneously, which was the more of the third, fourth stringers. But in the one where Kirk Cousins was leading it, that's where you had pretty much the first and second stringers rotating in throughout on both offense and defense. Even alongside the offensive line, uh, I saw Kyle Hinton go in there at guard. I saw Ryan Newsel take some snaps. I saw Storm Norton take a good amount of snaps actually. Like
yeah,
it wasn't. Like don't get me wrong, this is absolutely still Caleb McGarry's job. But I did see some snaps where Caleb McGarry was pulled out, Storm Norton was put in there. So that was an interesting thing that I noted as well. But yeah, on that like near side field where Kirk Cousins was really running the show, uh, you mostly only saw among the rookies, not mostly, you only saw among the rookies Braylon Trice and Rook. Rook was out there next to Eddie Goldman with that sort of second team of defensive linemen. But again, like everyone was rotating out throughout to the point where, obviously we know that Onyemata and Grady are going to be the first teamers, but it's not going to be all right, you have these four guys along the defensive line and they're going to play like 80% of the snaps. No, it's going to be a heavy rotation throughout. And it was interesting for me to see Braylon Trice. I think he got more run than Zach Harrison did, and coming in, the idea was probably Zach Harrison going into year two. He's going to be one of those candidates to sort of take that next step along with Arnold Ebiketie. But you know, they look like they really trust Braylon Trice out there, and seems like they do have some expectations based on what we saw in day one. Again, I want to preface every single thing I say today by saying based on what we saw in day one,
day
because
one, yes.
just day one. It is just day one, but it's a good sign for Braylon Trice that he is getting that run with the Kirk Cousins unit.
Yeah, for sure. And I know it's going to be one of the most asked questions. Eddie Goldman was indeed there. He was playing. It sounds like he was playing with the twos. Did Eddie
Yes,
Goldman, can you confirm this? This is the rumors, that the Eddie
yes,
Goldman does exist, is a real
yes.
player,
Eddie
is
Goldman
at
is
training
actually
camp.
just
Yes.
Eddie Goldman is a figment of all of our imaginations.
Collective
Uh,
delusion. Yes.
Eddie Goldman is Tyler Durden in Fight Club. Like he's just like no, but Eddie Goldman was out there. Eddie Goldman was out there with the twos. He was out there next to Rook. He had Lorenzo Carter next to him on a few of those snaps. He had Arnold Ebiketie next to him on a few of those snaps. Eddie Goldman was out there. Eddie Goldman figures to firmly be in that competition for a roster spot alongside the interior defensive line. Like he is out there.
Yes, he does exist. He is playing. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely like, other than Zion Logue, probably the most prototypical nose tackle guy. So if they want that space eater, it seems like he's the one they'll probably keep. But we'll see how Zion Logue can perform over the course of camp. See if he can get into that crack that second team rotation. See if he can get out there. But fascinating there. I know, continuing on the defensive side, you mentioned it. One of the best, one of the most watched battles is going to be that outside cornerback 2 spot across from AJ Terrell. And right now, Mike
It
Hughes seems
It
like,
was not a battle right today.
yeah,
Like it was not like there were a couple of spots where, you can firmly see, in those lineups, like yes, strong safety. There is a heavy rotation. Richie Grant is getting more of the snaps, sure, but DeMarco Helms is factoring in. Like he is spelling him plenty of times. Inside linebacker, next to Caden Ellis. It feels like a 50-50 between Troy Anderson and Caden Ellis, even though Troy Anderson is the starter on paper. But yeah, cornerback too. It was a lot of my cues. Like it was a lot of my cues out there. He looks like I was surprised because I thought, all right, like this is going to be one of those positions where we have no idea who's even in the lead. Like maybe we can do a this guy's leading on paper, but no, it was almost exclusively my cues out there. And then on nickel, it was D. Alford.
Mhm.
And then you had Clark Phillips rotating in slightly a little bit later on. I would say he's with the twos. Antonio Hamilton rotated in slightly here and there. Kevin King rotated in slightly on nickel, but yeah, it's my cues right now. That was a bit of a surprise to me because it's like yeah, if you had no idea what was going on, if you were just sort of placed at Flowery Branch with no context about this roster and no context about any of the battles or anything that happened in the past, you would probably say, yeah, Mike Hughes is he's one of those like very firm starters along with AJ Terrell and the rest of those guys.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the things I know when Mike Hughes was signed. It was our one frequent topic of conversation was like, okay, like Mike Hughes, early in his career they made him play the slot. He wasn't very good, and then he went to Kansas City, played outside, and was good. He was like a 78 overall PFF grade. Ended up having a real bounce back year. Finally, and then it was like great. And then they back to Atlanta. He comes and they make him play inside, and it's not good. So maybe outside corner, maybe that's just where he needs to play. Maybe that's just the secret.
And I'm really anxious to see tomorrow what the plan is going to be. So I again day one I have no idea what is the strategy for Raheem Morris in camp. Like maybe tomorrow we go out there and it's Clark Phillips who's exclusively out there with the twos, or as the cornerback too. Like we have no idea. Maybe it's going to be Antonio Hamilton, uh, or if it's Mike Hughes who's out there playing as much as he played today with as cornerback too. That'll be pretty telling. But right now we can only go off of what we can go off of. But I am excited to see tomorrow what goes on with that specific spot.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the more fascinating ones. And yeah, even, Mike Hughes, it's honestly like I was surprised to hear how much Clark Phillips was playing earlier in camp, given, Mike Hughes is the veteran, they're paying him more, that sort of thing. And it seemed like Phillips was maybe starting to gain ground there, but obviously first day of camp, and
It's
we'll see
big.
how it
It's big.
develops. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see there. I know Mike Hughes is like a dirty word to some people, but guys, I think if he plays outside, he's going to be fine. I think it's just Hughes in the slot. I don't know why people keep trying to make that happen. That's just not really worked for him. But
Reading the
inside,
Twitter reaction to Mike Hughes was very entertaining to me today.
yes,
Because
I
people
knew.
are just
Yeah.
yeah, people are already panicking, like, they're already ready to give up on the season because Mike Hughes is playing a lot on day one of training camp. Some people are ready to bury Caleb McGarry because Storm Norton got a few snaps with the starters as well.
Well,
So
people have been trying to bury Caleb McGarry for probably the last 5 seasons, so that's no surprise. That's no surprise at all. Any opportunity, really. But yeah, let's move on. A lot of interesting defensive stuff to talk about today because that's where most of the open battles are. But linebacker, I know a lot of people are staring at that one, right? So Troy Anderson, Nate Landman, how is the snap distribution there? It seems like Caden Ellis is one of the starters for sure. But how did that look in terms of how those guys were lining up?
yeah, Caden Ellis is entrenched, and you saw a lot of rotations in and out between both Anderson and Nate Landman. Like I would say right now, Troy Anderson is the starter. He I said in my article that it was 50-50 snaps. It's more 55-45, 60-40-ish, like to the point where the starter is getting like a bit more, but it's still you can very clearly see that it's a very open competition. And there were, plenty of times where it's what one snap Troy Anderson gets it, next snap late Nate Lehman goes in there. So that's one of those like very wide open battles. I know that Troy Anderson has the draft pedigree. Troy Anderson has more of the tools, more of the measurables that you sort of desire in that position. But Nate Landman, remember, Nate Landman had a hell of a season last year in relief of Troy Anderson. So it's not, I would say right now, Troy would be the slight favorite. But I mean, Nate Landman isn't really going away.
Right.
And this is going to be one of those things where it may come down to the wire. But either way, you're really excited to have both of these guys because you have you know, whoever doesn't start is going to be one of the best depth players at inside linebacker in the NFL, which is, you know, it's sort of a surprising luxury to have considering what you had going into last season. But nonetheless, it's a very nice luxury to have. But yeah, those guys are going to be at it. They're going to be sort of at each other's throats when it comes to this competition, and that's one of those spots where I would say is a very, very like clear battle. It's a very wide open battle right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And open competitions between two good players are a very good thing. Like you said, it's exciting, it's fun, and no matter who wins, like you're gonna have a really good depth player. And like I think Raheem mentioned at one point, like they're not necessarily ruling out playing all three linebackers. Like if the situation calls for it, or if they come up with some packages that like they're like, it might be that Anderson, Ellis, and Landman are three of our best 11 defensive players, so we just get them all on the field. We're going to find ways to do that if we can. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I think we'd all like Anderson to seize the job because that probably means that he's getting it and getting fully adjusted to linebacker, and obviously his ceiling is just incredible. Landman is just the more intuitive player, the more seasoned player, the guy that's played linebacker his entire career. So it wouldn't shock anyone if he does win the job and is able to continue playing at a high level. But I think in terms of ceiling guys, I think Landman's a better like third linebacker, and I'm sure he could probably start for some teams without question. But I think in Atlanta, Troy Anderson becoming that starting middle linebacker that can play the coverages that Ellis and Landman can't really play. I think that's really important for this defense. So certainly hope that turns out. But the other big one that you did mention in passing already was Richie Grant versus DeMarco Hellams, and I think that's another contentious battle that a lot of people are going to be paying attention to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Richie Grant is, the starter on paper right now, but that's also one of those where I would say I would say that Troy Anderson has a higher chance of holding on to his job than Richie Grant has of holding on to his job. And I mean, I can't really discern more than I can discern just on day one of camp. I'm just talking about going in, yeah, everything we know surrounding the team. I feel like it would be maybe in the team's best interest, sort of, for DeMarco Helms to win that role because Richie Grant is a $4 million cap hit this year, $3.96 million, and I feel like if Richie Grant does not win that role, like he would be a very, very expensive backup who hasn't really flashed very often in his opportunities as a starter over the past few years. But yeah, Grant got more of the snaps, slightly more of the snaps, but DeMarco Hellams was definitely factoring in. We all know we all really liked Hellams last year, 7th-round rookie, proved to be a very, very good depth piece, had a very strong camp, a very good preseason. Now being a team starting safety is that's a whole different beast as opposed to what Helms' role was last year. But he's going to have every single opportunity, I think, to seize this starting opportunity. And I mean, yeah, this is going to be one of those things where Richie Grant is going to be, I feel, a lot more uncomfortable this year in camp than he was than he was last year or the year before, where it's like, okay, this guy is a starter. The team has a lot of expectations of him, and it's not really much of a question about who's starting next to Jesse Bates. This year, it's a howling question.
Yeah, no, it is, and I'm yeah, I mean, I agree this for salary cap reasons with that safety battle. Like, I think Richie Grant has to win it. Like, he can't just sort of coast. Like, I'm not implying that he would try to coast, but like, he can't just sort of be the same as DeMarco Hellams. I think like if DeMarco Hellams is the same as Grant, the team's probably going to take that savings and go spend it on a veteran safety or something like that. So I think Grant has to sort of excel this training camp and really seize that job if he wants to stick around. But maybe the team is fine with paying him that money. I mean, it's not exorbitant, certainly. I mean, $4 million, it's not ridiculously high. That's a good depth player salary, like a mid-level veteran. But yeah, I think they would probably like to get more out of Grant, and I'm hoping that this is the year that he can turn it on. It is a contract year, obviously, so it's an important time for him. I hope that he can get it done, because it'd be good for the defense, certainly, to have two good safeties in that room. But yeah, well, I mean, we'll just have to see. One thing that I saw that seemed to check out with what I'd heard from a couple other people was that it seems like Ray McLeod is like not just a special teams player; he's a fixture on the offense and is a starting wide receiver for this team in 11 personnel. And it seems like that was what continued to be the case on the first day of training camp.
Yeah. I mean, Ray McLeod, like, coming into camp, you're thinking, yeah, Rondale Moore. They traded for Rondale Moore. He's going to be that guy. And you almost sort of even pencil Rondale Moore into your 53-man roster, and you're like, okay, there's not like I was looking through the roster last night, and just like scoping out in my mind of who's sort of possibly on the bubble and who to sort of watch out for it. And I get to the wide receivers and I'm like, okay, yeah, like Drake London, Darnell Mooney, both of those guys got a lot of reps out there with the ones. It sort of goes back to show of that Los Angeles Rams, Sean McVay type philosophy of your best guys are going to be the guys who get the most snaps. And I feel like that's going to be the case with Pitts, London, and Mooney. And then, after that, Kaderil Hodge is your special teams gunner. He's obviously going to be there. And I get to Rondale Moore, and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, like, of course Rondale Moore is going to be on this roster. Like, and it's no question. He's probably going to be that starting slot guy. And, I also put Ray McLeod in there because I'm like, yeah, he's going to be your primary special teams player. But yeah, coming out of today, I'm not sure anymore about Rondale Moore because he did not get a single snap with Kirk Cousins and on the Kirk Cousins field with the ones and twos. Ray McLeod was out there almost exclusively, in the slot, and they were doing a lot of stuff with Ray regarding a lot of pre-snap motions. They were moving him around a lot, and it feels like he is going to definitely be a factor on this team. Looking at what we know today, he was also the first guy to field a punt return. He was the first guy to field a kick return. Rondale Moore was out there as one of the second string returners along with Mike Hughes after McLeod and Avery Williams. But yeah, I mean, even guys like Josh Ali sort of seem to be ahead of Rondale Moore on the depth chart, even though it was pretty evident that these primary receivers are getting this many reps, and then everyone else is sort of down here. But yeah, Rondale Moore, I would sort of be worried if I was a Rondale Moore fan out there, however many of those there are.
I'm sure there's some stands. There always are. Yeah.
Yeah, the Rondale Moore Muse guys. I'm sure someone's gonna make a Rondale Moore Muse. But yeah, Ray McLeod right now. That was seeing him out there. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of Ray McLeod out there, not just on returns.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and that's definitely going to be one to continue to watch. But I know that was most. I think a lot of people thought, okay, well, Rondale Moore's had to miss time with the hamstring injury and all this stuff, so maybe he's just working his way back. But he'll be healthy for training camp. He'll be back out there. But it doesn't seem like he's been healthy. He's healthy now, and still not getting on the main field. So we'll see if that's definitely gonna be one to monitor in terms of who gets on that starter field and on the backup rotation as well. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I think more of an open question whether he makes the roster or not than we thought going into this thing. Of course, just day one of training camp. We're going to say that about 15 times, folks. But in case you forgot, it is just day one of training camp. But yeah, let's get to You mentioned Kyle Pitts. It does seem like Kyle Pitts, London, and Darnell Mooney are going to probably be your primary skill position guys, that they were playing basically every snap that they could together. And I know a lot of people are excited to hear it, but it sounds like Kyle Pitts is not just going to be playing in line, Adnan.
Yeah, they were moving Kyle Pitts all over. Like he was in line sometimes, he was in the slot sometimes, he was lined up completely out wide sometimes, and yeah, he's like Kyle Pitts. The other thing of fantasy football players, he's roommates with the three quarterbacks. I know some people are going to take him in fantasy football because of that. It's the Cooper Cup thing a few years ago, right? Like Cooper Cup and Matthew Stafford are having breakfast together every day, and it turns out that that ended up being very sage, very sage reporting, because Cooper Cup ended up having one of the greatest wide receiver seasons ever. Um, but yeah, Kyle Pitts is rooming with Cousins, Heineke, and Michael Penix. So yeah, just a heads up to the fantasy players. But yeah, Charlie Warner is definitely the tight end too as well. I even saw him lined up out wide for a play or two. So that that was pretty
Total
interesting.
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's but maybe they're throwing us a curveball out there.
Just
Um,
seeing if people are paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. So, yeah, Kyle Pitts. I'm expecting a very strong. Like it's now or never with Kyle Pitts, right? Like this is the season. Like we had the poor quarterback play, we had the poor play calling, we had the injuries, but now it's sort of like it's almost even unfair to Pitts, everything that he's had to go through, to the point where if he has to go through another injury this year, then it's just like, okay, like it's really unfair, but we really can't, we really don't have time to wait anymore. But yeah, like this is the year where everything sort of has to come together. And, so far, to Zack Robinson's credit, to Raheem Morris's credit, it looks like they have a plan in place. Kirk Cousins, they all sort of have a plan in place for Kyle Pitts, and I would expect Pitts to have the strongest year of his career thus far, and that's saying something because he had 1,000 yards in his rookie season.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that's. It just seems like that was like the expectation for Pitts, was like, oh, he's gonna have 1,000 yards every year, and like he did it his first year, and everyone was like, okay, cool, yeah, yeah, but we expected that. And then like the situation's obviously been bad since then, but yeah, I mean, I agree. Like I think to really change his narrative back to being like, oh, this is a top 5 pick caliber player, you know, having this bounce back year, and being 1,000 plus yards, and being close to what we thought he was going to be at this stage in his career, that'll go a long way. But I mean, you've seen these sort of, like last year with Nico Collins is what example I constantly go back to. And yeah, Nico Collins was a second round pick, but like, you know, you see a guy, you're like, oh, this guy's great, he's interesting, and then has some disappointing seasons in a bad situation. All of a sudden, you get a new quarterback in the building, and he pops off, and now everyone's like, oh, Nico Collins is one of the best receivers in the NFL. I think that's like the type of thing we're going to get with Kyle Pitts this year. It's like, oh, wow, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, like, who knew? They were great players all along. They just needed, competent quarterbacking and offensive coordinating. And that brings me to another point. It sounds like, in terms of offensive coordinating, it sounds like we've got a big fan of offensive coordinator Zack Robinson, and fellow Robinson, Bijan Robinson, who was singing his praises today. So I was curious about what Bijan was talking about there with Zack Robinson.
Yeah. No, we got Bijan in post game, post practice, and I would like to just apologize to all of the camera people whose shots I got into. So we were inside, like inside the media room, where we had Grady, Jarrett, and Grady was talking. Then I like see Bijan Robinson outside, and I'm like in the corner of the room because, by the way, the media room was absolutely packed. Like I've
Oh
never
yeah,
seen
yeah.
so many members of the media in there. Like last training camp, the training camp before, like it never. Um, then I see Bijan, and I'm like, all right, like I love Grady. He's, but I need to go talk to Bijan Robinson, and I sort of tried to duck, but I feel like I got in some people's shots. So my apologies to the people.
You got to
Public.
get the content, Adnan. You can't worry about the collateral damage when you're getting the
Yeah, I mean, what
content.
can I say, man? It's a bloodbath in there. It's a free
Yeah,
for all.
it's a bunch of
Um,
sharks. Yeah.
yeah. So I go out there and I sort of got out there midway through, and Bijan answered every single question out there, and he was sort of talking about uh, putting a lot of emphasis. I guess it really stuck with him. He had a couple of fumbles last year, and he's like, I don't want to do that again. I really focused on ball security, leadership. Just the sort of the Bijan Robinson, like PR that you expect of this guy is one of the faces of the franchise. He was one of the faces of Texas, and he just always says the right things. And then he said something that what was a little bit interesting to me, where he was talking about Zack Robinson, and he just sort of spoke about how how the team ran a lot of outside zone last year, and how he never ran more outside zone in his life than he did last season. I think that was Josh Kendall who said that, and Bijan like immediately agreed. And then he talked about how it's very important to not be predictable on the offense, and how this year they're really sort of going to throw in a lot of change ups to not just run the same thing over and over again. And I was like, that's kind of interesting, because I feel like that was one of the major complaints about Arthur Smith last year, of all right, we're just telegraphing this at this point. It's just outside zone, outside zone, outside zone. And yeah, I mean, Bijan could not stop singing Zack Robinson's praises. He says that Robinson and him really collaborate a lot together. They even draw plays together. Like he says that it's very important for him to have an offensive coordinator that really sort of you know listens to you, and that really that's really sort of open to communication. And once again, I was like, that's interesting, given given last season as well. So
Hmm.
I don't know if
I
if
don't
it
think
was
he's intentionally throwing shade. I think he's just excited about Zack Robinson, but the shade
he
is
is very
there
excited, but
regardless.
yeah, it just felt so like fascinating. Some of these quotes.
You don't
Um,
say, Bijan.
But yeah, he did compare it to Steve Sarkisian, old friend. He said that
Yeah.
it's the same thing as Steve Sarkisian at Texas, and he talked about how much he loved playing for Sark. And I mean, yeah, we saw Sark did a great job with the Longhorns when Bijan Robinson was there. But yeah, it seems like Bijan is incredibly excited about Zack Robinson. We're all incredibly excited about Zack Robinson. Lovers of the fullback position probably won't be, because there was none. there,
Yes, let's all pour one out for fullback in Atlanta. It was a hell of a run.
yep, fullback. We'll never forget you, Ovi Mahaley. We'll never forget you, Patrick DeMarco. But the fullback position seems to sort of be obsolete when it comes to Zack Robinson's off. It would expected. It was expected.
Yeah.
There was plenty of two running backfields with both Bijan and Tyler Algier. Algier was getting plenty of his own reps in practice today. He was out there with Cousins a lot, but yeah. So it's it's exciting for Zack Robinson too, because if this offense performs to the level where we expect, and if he sort of utilizes these weapons to the level where they haven't been getting utilized, and Zack Robinson himself will probably be on the short list as a head coaching candidate within a couple of years, most likely, maybe even within next year. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but right now, day one of camp, everyone seems incredibly excited. Raheem Morris was pumped up. He came in. I think he jokingly lectured D-Led about his phone going off at one point.
Yep, it's a
Um,
tradition.
he,
We have to call out D-Led on something on the first day, for sure.
he was joking with media members. He talked about how it feels like just like his first training camp when he was 24 years old as a coach. He says it's always the same, and I get where he's coming from, because every training camp, even on a much more microscopic level from Raheem Morris, even looking at it myself, like every year, no matter how many years I've gone to training camp as a fan, now as a member of the media, it just always feels so exciting. And I mean, day one, like it should be nothing but positive, glowing reports, right? Especially when all we had was a walkthrough. It would be something very, very troubling if if it was
Yeah.
just a lot of negativity and if it was just a lot of bad stuff being reported. But yeah, it's customary. Like
Yeah, that's how it is.
of course, it's all positive today.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's incredibly exciting. Late July, one of my favorite times of year. Just feels like everything is ahead of you. Hope springs eternal. You have all these expectations, and it feels like the calm before the storm right now. Before we really get into, I mean, not for us. Like right now is the storm for us, but just the calm before the storm regarding the regular season.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really excited to see how this comes together. Again, I'm sure you guys. I mean, I've already mentioned it, but I'm not able to be there this year, so really thankful, of course, to Adnan for being down there every day to help get us this tremendous content, get that hands-on news for all of us, myself included. I know Gina's going to be there as much as she can as well. Excited to have all these notes. Like Adnan said, walkthroughs mostly, right? So we just we got a lot of sort of updates on the depth chart, updates on health, all that stuff. That's all good stuff. But yeah, in terms of movement on the depth chart or big plays or anything like that, not much of that to talk about today. But don't worry, that stuff's gonna be coming real soon. I appreciate all the diehards here on day here to get this day one recap. All like 50 of you. Appreciate Corey and Ray and Kieran, as well as some of the new folks in here. Cam, welcome. Thank you for subscribing, man. Matt Johnson did ask a quick question on the topic of Bijan. Are we expecting a full workhorse role this year, or is the new regime sticking with Algier as more than a breather back? I think we're expecting a workhorse role. I don't think we've seen anything necessarily at camp at this point that would like confirm that. But if it's like the Rams, I expect Bijan to get 75+%. But is that kind of your expectation as well, Adnan?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just again, we can't really discern much from today. Like, don't get me wrong, Algier did get some reps today, so I mean, Algier isn't going to completely go away.
No.
This isn't going to be like one of those old school '90s running backs. Like this isn't going to be Emmett Smith, and then like everyone else is just like not getting anything. But you can't really play like that in 2024. Bijan's going to get he's going to get the majority of the run. He talked also about how he's doing everything he can, both in the running game and the passing game. In his post practice interview. So I'm expecting Bijan to be utilized a lot, not just as a running back. He was utilized a lot last year, maybe even to the point where he was stretched a bit too thin. I'm not saying that like Bijan was. We all know that Algier was getting more run than we would like, but I'm just talking about how they were playing Bijan, a rookie, in the slot so much, and sort of they had a lot of expectation for him regarding the route tree. Um, but I mean, what we're gonna see a heavy usage out of Bijan. I even asked him, with like my only question as he was walking away with me. Well, the media person said that like, oh, you can ask, but we have to like walk together, and I'm like, yeah, should people take you first overall in fantasy drafts? And immediately he's like, yes, yes,
Yes.
well, take
I'm
me,
going
like
to. Yes.
number one, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that sort of tells you like, yeah, like he probably also knows that. I mean, one, he's incredibly confident, but he also probably knows that you don't rival Christian McCaffrey in fantasy if you get the usage that Bijan got last season.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, if it's funny because, and we've talked about this before for you hardcore veterans, but if you look at the snap counts, Bijan looked like he had this like stranglehold on the running back room. But if you look at the carries, Bijan I think only had like 20 or 30 more carries on the season than Algier. Bijan just got like all the passing down work. But like the passing game just wasn't very good, so it just didn't result in that many more yards for him. But I think Algier is a very good back, and certainly no slander on Algier. That like getting Bijan, I think we could always argue like was it really the best usage of, resources to get Bijan when we had a very good back in Algier already. And I'm sure we'll argue about that until the end of time. But the fact is, Bijan's here. He is a truly special back, and I think we're going to see even more of that this year than we saw last year. And we saw some last year. That makes you real excited. But Algier's not going to be relegated to nothing. I think Algier is a very important player on this roster. He's just going to be a player that probably won't see a ton of snaps if Bijan's healthy. And obviously, we hope Bijan's healthy all year. And in that case, Algier's just probably not going to get that many snaps. But if Bijan has to miss time, Algier's going to move into the Bijan role, and he's going to get that 75+% workload that Bijan's getting. So, and in an offense like this, where you're going to ride your main running back basically for the majority, 3/4 of the time or more, you need a really good second running back, because if you lose your number one, you don't want to just go to some, mediocre player as your number two guy. And I think Algier, obviously, we've seen that he's far more than that. Obviously, last year was an inefficient year. I think we, probably can point the finger at several things. I don't really think it was all Algier's fault, certainly. But I think they're both good. We're going to see both of them. Bijan's going to take on the workhorse role, and it's going to be great for fantasy. But Algier's going to be right there, and he's going to continue to have a role on this team, even if it doesn't result, in the best case scenario where Bijan never misses a snap, right? Then Algier's probably not going to play a lot. But that doesn't mean he's not an important player on this roster, and I think he certainly deserves that, to be credited with that important role. But yeah, anything else you wanted to touch on, Adnan? I know there not a whole lot, mostly update type stuff today, but anything else you want to touch on before we sign off?
I think we hit on everything, honestly.
Yeah.
It was really good to see Kirk Cousins out there. There will be, don't panic if there comes a day or, a drill where Kirk Cousins isn't out there. I think he talked about it, where the coaching staff, spoke with him that, if he needs a day off, returning from this Achilles injury, he can. If he needs, sort of part of a practice off, he can. So it's something where, they'll be in communication there. Kirk says that, Kirk is sort of the consummate pro. Like, Kirk is, you can tell that this man has been the quarterback like his whole life, because he sort of just like owns the room, and he sort of just, speaks the way he says all the right things. And he talked about how it's his goal to be out there every single day. He just doesn't want to suffer a setback. Grady Jarrett also talked about how they're ramping him up. They're ramping both of them up a little bit, to the point where even if one or both of them are limited, that's no cause for panic. It's just really great that they're both out there already practicing. So it's just, I feel like it's just important to note that they're out there, but there could be some special practice regimens for each of those guys. And hopefully moving forward, hopefully tomorrow we get some more live action, because it worked for day one, but there's only so many days where I can write about the depth chart and write about who's lined up with whom out there. Like, we need some action.
Yeah, we do. We need some action. I'm sure they're going to give it to us soon. I sure hope they do, for all of us here. But again, thanks so much to Adnan for the hands-on coverage. I'm sure we'll get Gina on here when she's available as well. Thanks to her for chipping in as well. Guys, we will be back. I don't know if we'll be doing a show like every single day of practice, but we'll definitely try to do several. We'll probably do one tomorrow. Saturday, I think the practice is really late, so we probably won't do one Saturday. But
Saturday is gonna be a tough.
Yeah,
because practice, I think Saturday starts at like 6. 7.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's very late.
Yeah. So we're probably not going to do a show Saturday, but we will continue doing them, most days that it's available. Obviously, we'll have recaps on the site as well for the practices that we're able to cover. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us for this practice recap. Please subscribe, check out the Patreon, check out the channel memberships if you want to support the show. We really appreciate that. Get in on those patron fantasy leagues. I'm going to be making a post, I think, next week, getting things going on the patron fantasy leagues. I know you guys, it's one of our favorite community activities. Definitely enjoy those every year. I got to start winning those again. Unfortunately, I don't think I won any of the leagues last year, so very
So
disappointing on my part. But
I
yeah,
remember, I think in one of the leagues, I think I was the top scoring team. I lost in like the semifinal, but I remember beating you in like the first round, and the only reason why I beat you is because Pat Mahomes took a knee at
yeah,
like the
yeah,
very end of the game.
yeah. It was like 0.7 points or something like that. Yeah, fantasy, lots of fun. Definitely, very serious leagues, of course, as you can tell. No, they're just fun leagues. But we appreciate everyone for joining us. Thank you guys so much. And like I said, check out those things. Like subscribe if you got training camp questions. You can leave them in the comments here. Leave them on the site. And yeah, appreciate everyone for hanging out with us. We're just getting started here with our training camp coverage. We'll be back, like I said, over the next week or so until I think Adnan will be there every day until the team leaves for the joint practices in Miami. Usually about the time, the preseason kicks off is when we start focusing more on the preseason coverage as opposed to the training camp stuff. So looking forward to it, guys. We will see you guys probably tomorrow and going forward. Thank you guys so much. I'm Kevin Knight. He's Adnan Ikic. We'll see you next time on the Falcoholic Live. Have a great day, folks. Thanks.